Hey everybody, it's Jim. I'm a real estate investor and real estate agent here in Las Vegas. And today I'm going to be tackling a question that I get a lot. All right. Everyone always asks me, how do I get my first rental property? I want to buy one property and then I want to eventually build a big portfolio of properties where I can collect passive income and be rich and live my best life. Before we get started with the actual details of everything, the question is, a lot of people ask me, how do I get my first rental property? And I always ask them, do you own any property already? Do you have a house that you live in already? And then you're trying to get a rental property, or are you trying to buy your first property and it is your investment property, right? So I'm going to assume that you own no properties at the moment, all right? Because every property, in my opinion, is an investment anyways. Whether you live in it or you rent it out, it's your first investment property, in my opinion. So let's start with the things that you need to buy your first property. The first thing you need is money, all right? So you need money. You know, why do you need the money? Because you need a down payment to buy this house. You need to start saving money, all right? A lot of people, they're like, well, I don't have money down. Isn't there down payment assistance? Need some money, all right? You can borrow it from your parents, or you can start saving money. Start living below your means, right? Quit going to Starbucks every day. Quit buying handbags. Quit buying shoes. Drive a more modest car, all right? You don't need a $100,000 car probably if you're still renting. You need to start saving money. That's number one, all right? And you need to have some capital as a down payment, possibly closing costs. And you might need to renovate a house too or something like that. There's just a lot. Number one thing is you need some money for your down payment, all right? So start saving money however you can. Move back home with your parents if you can, all right? Save that money, because let's say you save $2,000 a month by moving back home. Well, in 1 year, you're gonna have 24 grand to use as a down payment, all right? And it all adds up, okay? Number two, you're gonna need your credit to be ready. So if you have bad credit and you have bunch of maxed out credit cards, you need to deal with that first too, all right? You need to pay down your high interest credit cards first, reduce that debt, because when you qualify for a mortgage, they're going to look at what they call a debt to income ratio. So if you have all these debts, you're not going to qualify to buy much of a house, all right? If you have, $2,000 in credit card bills every month, it's $2,000 less you can qualify towards buying a house. And who knows, maybe you have other credit issues. Maybe you have charged off debt. You need to settle those things, all right? You need to resolve your bad credit and start getting into good credit, because credit's important, because based on what your credit score is, you may not qualify if it's too low, but even if you qualify barely, you're not going to get the best rate, right? So if you want to buy a house and get the best rate, let's try to improve your credit as much as you can. Number three, all right, you got to have income, all right? If you want to get a mortgage to buy a property, you have to have a way to repay this debt. I say this a lot because in today's day and age, there's a lot of people that don't have conventional like W-2 jobs, right? You're some type of gig worker and you get like a 1099. You don't get a W-2 anymore. I'm in that boat too. I work off commissions and things like that. I get a 1099. And one thing that business owners, self-employed people do is they get caught up in writing off everything, right? You're like, oh, I made 100 grand, but I wrote off 100 grand, right? Well, basically your tax return is showing that you make zero at the end of the year, all right? Chances are you don't make zero, but you wrote off your Starbucks and you wrote off your $1,000 lease payment and all that. And now it's showing that you make no money, right? So you're not going to qualify for much that way, all right? So get your taxes in order, all right? Because to qualify for a conforming loan, you need 2 years on the job anyways too, right? So if you just got a job making a lot of money, it's not like you get to qualify off of it right away, unless you're a doctor or something like that. There's a special program for that. But if you're not, you need 2 years on the job, or at least 2 years in that field. If you've been working at the casinos, dealing cards or whatever, well, if you move to another casino and you're dealing cards there too, they can combine those things. But if you were driving Uber and now you're, I don't know, doing taxes somewhere, you're going to need 2 years in job history to show that you make this money that you can repay this mortgage that you're borrowing too, all right? So those are the top three things that you need to have ready before you buy your first house, all right? And you can't start too soon, because credit repair takes time, saving money takes time, and having 2 years on the job takes time. I'm going to just share with you some client stories that I really like, that I've helped in the past with first-time home buyers. They're just really inspiring stories to me. I have a client that I helped recently. He was a first-time home buyer. He relocated here from California. He saved some money and everything, but he bought his very first house, he ended up renting out the master bedroom to somebody. Why did he do that? You buy a nice brand new house and then you rent out the master to somebody? That's crazy, right? It's not crazy. It's a very, very mature sacrifice that he made, right? Because renting out that master bedroom, actually, he was able to get half of his mortgage payment covered with that, right? Because the master bedroom's the nicest part. You get to charge a lot of rent. Half the mortgage paid for now with one roommate. He gets to live in the other room, and then he has a home office in the other room. It's a brilliant move right there. It might seem like it's a sacrifice right now, but down the road, and you're like, oh my God, you know, the house has been paid down a lot, and half of it was paid by this renter, right? And you as the homeowner will get all the appreciation and also all of the tax write-offs for the mortgage interest that you've been paying with the rent that you're collecting too. So that's huge right there. If you don't want to rent out the master, that's fine. Maybe rent out the smaller rooms, right? Another strategy that I've seen people do too is you can buy a multi-family unit, right? You can buy a duplex, triplex, fourplex, right? Live in one of the units, rent the other ones out. Chances are their rents will cover your mortgage payment. The only disadvantage to that is you're living right there. They know you're the owner, landlord. They might ask you for a lot of repairs all the time. They know you're there. But the good news for you is you see when they come home, and if they're not paying you rent, you go knock on that door right away, right? That's another option you can do. And then let's just say you live there for a while, you get more financially stable, and you're ready to move out of this complex now. Okay, fine. You qualify with the income that you've collected over the years, you buy your next property, and it's kind of a stepping stone for you to get to your next property. And the unit that you once lived in is now an additional unit you can rent out now, right? I think that's a really good strategy too. Reason why it's important to buy your first property and not call it an investment property is because investment properties require higher down payments, and they also have higher interest rates too, because an investment property is considered more risky, right? So buy it as your primary home, all right? Because when you're buying a primary home to live in, you can get in with much less down. VA loans is 0 down. FHA 3.5% down. Conventional 5% down. It's less down payment you have to come up with, and you get the lowest interest rates, right? Because if you're living in the house, chances are you're not going to be as likely to default on those. Whereas an investment property, when things go down, that's probably going to be the first bill you forget to pay, right? Buy it as your primary home first, okay? Less money down, better interest rates. And when you move on to the next one, you're locked in those rates and terms, right? Which reminds me of a story of a friend of mine. He had a nice property in Summerlin, really cush and comfortable. He really wanted to get an investment property. So what he ended up doing was, instead of wanting to come up with, say, 20% down, he's like, why don't I just buy another primary home? So what he ended up doing is buying probably a little more modest of a primary home for the next one, because you're able to go in with a lower down payment now. You move into that for a little while and see how things go. And then later down the road, maybe you flip-flop it back. You move into your bigger house, and now you have your investment property for less money down than had you bought it as an investment property initially, right? Finally, you can start doing more alternative things too. I mentioned before about renting out rooms, but you don't always have to do a long-term roommate situation too. I have another client, this young lady, she bought a house. It was kind of big for her. It's a really big house, and it was just a single woman living there. What she ended up doing was doing a room share thing on Airbnb, right? So she'd just do a room for rent. She had, I think, like 3 or 4 extra rooms that she just rented out by the night, short-term rental style, Airbnb or whatever. And that's a great way to supplement your income. You still get to live in the house, and you get to share the common areas. They help you in the expenses of all that. Another great way to get into a property now, making a small sacrifice, because ideally, we don't want a bunch of people coming into our house, but right now, just to get started, might be something that you just put up with for now until you get more established down the road. And then you have your own house, and they're all rentals from there. The biggest problem these days right now are the mortgage interest rates and the high sale prices of homes as well too, right? Because interest rates are high, so it's hard to cash flow positive all the time right now unless you put a very large amount down. If you qualify for a mortgage now, and let's just say rates do come down eventually, well, then you can refinance that property, lower the mortgage payment as rates go down. If the market does really well and you have a tremendous appreciation, you can even do a cash out and use that equity as a down payment for your next property. If you're really wanting to build a portfolio, that's how you should be thinking on this stuff. And you just have to remind yourself that, real estate investing is more of a long-term investment. A lot of people ask me too, they're like, Jim, you have a lot of investment properties. It's nice. How do I get started, right? Well, I just want to remind everybody that it didn't start off like this. My first investment property, I put the down payment. The payment was pretty high. It was around $1,000, and the rent that I was collecting was like basically right around that too. So I basically did not make any positive cash flow for many years on that property. Actually, it was just building equity, if anything, right? And equity has no real use unless you sell it, right? But what I'm saying right now is you fast forward, 10 years later, well, the property value has more than quadrupled, and the rents that I'm collecting have almost, I would say, 2.5 times, right? So back then I wasn't making much positive cash flow. Now I am. The ones that have been paid off already, that's all equity that I have now too. So just remember that it doesn't happen overnight. You can't just have 10 homes all at once. How do I do it, right? There's not a hack for that. You need to build it step by step. What I'm telling you is from my own personal experience, all right? I've bought and sold many investment properties. I'm renting out a lot of properties, and you have to start somewhere, right? I mean, a lot of people ask me, well, that's not fast enough. I want to do it quick. And they want some secret cheat code or hack to do this, the easy way and the fast way. Well, if you find out how to do that, let me know, because I'd want to know how to do it faster too. But from what I know is what's tried and true, it's the fundamentals, right? It's about the numbers. It's about getting in the game. Since I've been doing real estate, prices of homes have gone up a lot. Every step back I go, 5 years back, 10 years back, people are like, oh, prices are high. I can't get in now. Prices are high. I can't get in now. The problem is you have to get in, because if you don't get in, you're going to get left behind. Everyone's waiting for prices to come down. They haven't come down. You need to have a property so when the market goes up, you ride it up with everybody. Even though it's not your perfect dream house at the very first property, just know that it's a stepping stone to get to that dream house. You don't need to buy your dream house right now. You just need to start with one property, and you might live in it at first. You might rent out the rooms. Or when you start doing better, you buy a bigger, nicer house, and then you turn that first property into your rental property where you don't have to live there with roommates anymore, right? So there you have it. There's a little crash course on how to get your first investment property or your first property, period. So just remember, when playing the game of real estate, you got to make these smart moves ahead of time. That's saving money, improving your credit, and then having stable income, all right? Get those things done so you can get into the game of real estate, because I'm telling you, it's the one thing that has been very, very tried and true, all right? They say most millionaires do it by doing it with real estate, all right? That should be you too. Just know you need to make some type of sacrifice at this point to get to that level where you want to be down the road. Thanks for watching today. Check out my channel. I have a lot of real estate investing videos out there. And if there's a topic you want me to cover, drop a comment below. I'll definitely do that. Or reach out to me. I'd love to connect with you. We can do a Zoom call, talk about getting you started in investments. Stay tuned. I'm going to tell you how to get your second property down the road, right? So stay tuned.